Hello, Lizzie here, and today we're going to show you how to make Dorothy. And you can see Dorothy is the most amazing bag. It's big, roomy, it's got pockets on both sides. It's up to you. You can have one, you can have two. I thought, you know what, I'll spoil myself and have two. It's quite a sort of boxy design, so if you've ever made a boxy pouch, then it's very similar to that. It's got a zip along the top, and inside you can see I've used my batik fabric, and again there's more pockets, so you've got pockets for your phone, maybe your car keys. It depends what you're going to use it for, doesn't it really? It would make a great shopper bag. It would make a great bag to take to the beach when we have some lovely weather. See how well it stands? It's got a boxy bottom and it's got a boxy top as well, so it really is a very roomy bag. I've used double wadding on mine, and you can decide if that's for you. It gives it a little bit more structure. You can use foam if you want to, of course you can. Any of the fabric stiffeners that you want to use is absolutely fine. But what the secret is with this bag is that I've quilted it, and I don't know if you can pick it up on camera, but it's all quilted, and then the pocket isn't quilted. It's kind of put on the diagonal, only because I use checks. So it's quite nice to have that juxtaposition of the quilting and then the non-quilted pockets. So basically that is Dorothy, and she's got some really nice good straps there, still short enough to carry if you wanted to put your laptop in there, but also long enough for you to put over your arm. They'll easily go under there, and so it could be a work bag, couldn't it? I mean, there's going to be lots of I think there's going to be lots of ways you're going to be able to use Dorothy. I think she's absolutely lovely. I've used contrasting thread to do my quilting. Now that's up to you if you're brave enough, but I've used a turquoise embroidery thread, so it's got a sheen to it. The one I'm going to demonstrate is actually a gold embroidery thread, so I've done some already, so but it doesn't take any prisoners, so you might want to use matching thread. So maybe on this you'd perhaps pick up a grey or a brown. You'd still be going obviously over the turquoise, but it wouldn't half be so noticeable, because obviously a lot of this is greys and browns. So lots of options, lots of different things you can do. You could add tabs either end if you wanted to. When we get to that point, I can talk to you about that. The handles, the straps have stiffening, so they're really substantial, nice and strong, and they go all the way down to the bottom to match the decorative base. So you can see that it's got a decorative base, and I think that base would look fantastic in a faux leather. And also, if you're going to be putting this down on the floor anywhere, a faux leather, unless you put the little feet on the bottom, a faux leather would be very practical. So let's put Dorothy to one side. I'm not sure where I'm going to put her. Pop her down there. See if we can get her to stand up. That's it. And we're going to start with the bag body as such. So let me get my bits and bobs. So I've done some already, because the quilting part can take a little while to do, but I'm going to talk you through it. So if we go on the overhead, you'll be able to see what that looks like. So let's just I just want to change my view so I can see that okay for you. So what you're going to do is you're going to layer up your bag body with 2 layers of wadding. Now I've used an 80-20. Like I say, you might want to use foam. I'll leave that for you to decide, but any of that will be lovely to use. And what I've done is I've cut my wadding an inch smaller all the way around, and then cut my corners, and it's given me a nice 1/2 inch wide sort of gap there where all the fabric is. Something I don't like is to have too much wadding in my seams, so I've left that, as you can see, I've left that sort of bare, if you like. So 2 layers, and I've actually glued the layers together with fabric adhesive spray, a temporary fabric adhesive spray, and then glued again onto my topping fabric. Isn't this fabric glorious? Got a lovely mustardy colour on the base as well. So then, and all of this is in the pattern, so you mustn't worry that you need to remember this. It's just really a visual on where you're aiming for. So then in the pattern I've said to you to measure 1.5 inches, and you're starting to draw lines across your work, okay? And these are 1.5 inches apart. You might want to do 2 if you're sort of not wanting to do as much quilting as me. And you're going to use a heat erasable pen or an erasable pen, chalk pen, anything like that that will, you know, the marks will go. And you're going to do a crosshatch, okay? Now, obviously all these things are optional. Do your crosshatch, I love it, but you could, when we made Oakley, we did stripes going down, which actually I thought was really lovely. So you might perhaps want to do stripes instead, but I do quite like the crosshatch. You're going to be joining these 2 pieces together, and I sort of tell you in the pattern, you join the bottom and the top together before you do anything. That's your first sort of thing to do, is to cut your pieces according to the pattern, and you're joining them together to make one piece, and it is a square, so it's absolutely perfect. And then you're going to pop your wadding on, and then you're going to cross hatch, and then you're going to stitch it, you're going to quilt it. So I've done some. I've used a gold thread, and I don't know if you can see this, but you know, I haven't necessarily followed the lines. I don't know if you can see, followed the lines what I've drawn, but by the time you heat this and the lines, your pen lines go, you won't notice if you're a little bit wriggly. I shouldn't worry about it. Yeah, there's more things in life to worry about than wriggly quilting lines. So we're going to finish cross hatching this, okay? So that's your first job, is to pop these 2 pieces together and put your wadding on, 2 layers, use foam if you wish, Decaville if you want to, and then you're going to do your quilting. Now the reason why I've used 2 layers of wadding, batting, is to give you a little bit of puffiness in that quilting. You'll get the same effect with foam, so it's okay to use that. I just find foam a little bit unyielding sometimes. Yeah, so I've used a gold embroidery thread, a machine embroidery thread, to do my quilting with, and then throughout making the bag up we'll be changing our threads to like a gold thread to match the straps, and then maybe a cream thread to match the cream fabric. So there's a little bit of thread changing as we go through this, which is fine. I'll just move my pattern out of the way now. So we're going to get along and finish this quilting. Now I've upped my stitch length to I think it was 3.6, so it's quite big. So I'm just going to go back to that again and change the stitch length. So let me just do that. My pin cushion is in the way. Let's just move that out of the way. There we go. So let's change it up. So a nice long stitch is great. A, it's quick, and B, you see the stitches. If you have a small stitch, you don't get the same effect, I don't think. It's the same with top stitching. So let me just see where I've got to. I think I went all the way across. I just need to do the cross hatch bit. So what I'll do is I'll start off, and then probably you can, you know, go and make yourself a cup of tea and come back. No, we'll cut some of this bit out. So don't bother with a back stitch, don't bother with a locking stitch. Start about 1/8 of an inch in, so your fabric doesn't get crunched up in your feed dogs. So start about 1/8 of an inch in. The seam allowance on the actual bag body is 1/2 inch, so you've got a little bit to play there with. And then, like I say, just come up just before you come to the edge of your fabric, just cut your threads. So we'll start stitching this. Preferably, you're going to always go the right way. So in other words, I will work methodically across my piece. You can, if you want to, as it gets a little bit unyielding under your machine, turn it. But sometimes that twists the fabric. So just be aware of that. If you have glued your fabric and your wadding together nicely, you shouldn't really have too much bother with that. But better to err on the side of caution, I always say. So just take your time, you're following the lines. It's actually quite a nice, it's quite enjoyable actually. It does take a little while though. I'm not going to say that this is a quick make. If you didn't do the quilting, it probably, you'll cut an hour and a half out, 2 hours maybe. But I do like this effect. And it doesn't take too long. If you've got a thread cutter on your machine, oh the joy of having a thread cutter. Maybe it's something that you'll aspire to. I didn't have a thread cutter for many years. When? Maybe just in the last 5 years, maybe. Let's just cut my threads, there we are. And I've been sewing for many years, so it's not essential. So look, I'll finish this and then come back to me and we'll do the rest of the bag. So I've got 2 more lines to stitch and then we've completed the quilting. You can see I turned mine around because I was knocking my pin cushion off and generally most things on my desk. So I decided to turn it. So just stitch this last little bit. You'll probably find that you've got lots of little ends to snip and tidy away. So you can do that now. Or maybe as you're sewing round, you know, you can pop the threads back in so they can go into the seams. It's up to you. It depends how fussy you are with all your threads. I just usually snip off the ones that are obvious and then they're gone. So I'll just run my iron over the top and that gets rid of the blue lines. And if you have a quick look on the overhead, sometimes when you've left the blue line or your chalk lines, whatever pen you've used, it can look very messy and it can be disappointing. But when you start to iron them away or you brush them away or you're using a damp cloth, whatever means that you need to do to get rid of the lines, all of a sudden it becomes lovely and clear. Your stitching lines become really sharp. And it's quite a lovely magical time, because where you think, oh, I've missed that line and I've gone over that line and oh gosh, you're on a bit wriggly there, all of that angst goes because you can't see your drawn lines anymore, and that's absolutely gorgeous, I have to say. Right, so now we've got to this stage. Just snip that thread. The next thing we need to do is to sew the strap and the front pocket. So if I show you the half that I've already made up, and I've got a good way forward on this, but we're covering everything, so you mustn't worry. So on the one I've made up, hope you can see, we need to make the pocket that goes in the front and the straps, and those are placed on top of your quilted piece. So we'll do that next. So, as I said, there's going to be a few little sort of thread changes here. So I'm taking my beautiful gold embroidery thread off. What a treat, I love it. If I can use gold embroidery thread all day long, I would. First of all, I'm going to sew my pocket, so I'm going to use my cream thread. I mean, this is going to be very dependent on what fabrics you use, as to whether you need to change that, because we've got lots of top stitching to do, not only stitching the pockets together, and I didn't really want to use a gold thread for that, not, you know, like a gold sort of Gutermann, which is what we're going to sew the straps with. So it is really a case of doing a little bit of housework and changing your threads. It doesn't take a minute anyway. So let's get the needle threaded. This has got an automatic needle threader, and it's okay. I'm not going to say anything more than that. Oh dear me. Right, so we're going to stitch the pockets. So let's just find the pieces. So I might just do the lining pocket as well while we're there. So I've actually stabilised my fabric for the pocket with a very lightweight cotton interfacing. It's the G700 in the Viseline range, but you could use any lightweight dressmaking iron-on stabiliser interfacing just to make a little bit more substance to your pocket. So with the one that goes on the front, think about your directional fabric. If you're using directional fabric, we only want to stitch the top and the bottom. The sides we're going to leave as raw edges because they go under the straps. Okay, so I've got my white on white fabric here. I've got my lovely animal fabric. I was looking for something to make this bag with, and I saw this fabric and I thought, gosh, that's perfect. Right, so I'm taking my stitch length down to 2.8. You could go smaller if you wanted to. You could leave it on 3. This is not a structural part of the bag. This is literally putting 2 pieces of fabric together. So, I mean, don't go any... I mean, I had it on, you know, about 3.8 before, didn't I? So don't keep it on that. Unless you forget. and again, it doesn't really matter a huge amount. So I've stitched my lining of the pocket and the outer piece of fabric for my pocket, and all I've done is stitched the bottom and the top. So just this and this. These are still raw edged. So we're going to turn it through. Now I'm sure I didn't top stitch the pocket. I didn't with the other one, my original one. Yeah, I didn't. I didn't think I did, but of course you can. I'll leave that one for you to decide whether you want to do the extra bit of stitching. Sometimes it looks really nice with a bit of top stitching. So let's just get the iron back on. I might as well just keep that iron on. I'm going to be using it a fair bit. Whoops. So when I go to iron my pockets, I've opened it like that. So I'm just going to press that seam across there. Then I'm going to fold it, and then I'll, you know, it will make a nice edge. Because the fabric is stiffened, sometimes it's a little bit awkward in getting that lovely crispy top edge. So now I've ironed it, now I can flatten it, make it really neat. And like I say, you can top stitch if you want. When we go to put these straps on, you'll notice this when we come to it. We actually top stitch across the bottom of the pocket anyway. So let me just show you what I'm talking about. So on the one that I've partially made up, this section here, we top stitch it, because when we top stitch the straps on, we start from here, we come across, we go across the bottom of our pocket to secure it, up, across, down, across there again, up and across, making sure those straps are really well stitched on. So from here to here, I haven't changed my thread, I've used gold. I think it's going to be one of those things where if your contrast is great, in other words, if this was white and your contrast is black, you may not want to stitch with black across there. Okay, you might want to use white so it doesn't show on your pocket. I'll leave that one for you to decide. But I was very confident that I could stitch across there in the gold and it wouldn't look too bad, it wouldn't stand out. And I've just stitched on top of the existing stitches, and you'll see as I go round what I mean by that. So I've ironed my front pocket. I'm going to make up my inside lining pocket now. So you've got one long piece, so it's right sides together. So that's my piece, right sides together, and you're going to stitch all the way around, leaving a turning gap of about a couple of inches. It doesn't need to be massive. Do a locking stitch if you want to. Perhaps, you know, because it's going to be on a corner, you want it to be secure. Now I will switch mine on. There we go. It's done a reverse stitch, which is fine. And then from here let's put the foot down. We'll start off with a reversing stitch. So you're going along 3 sides, but you're leaving a turning gap because obviously you've got to fold, and that fold will be on the top of the pocket. So if we look at the lining, which is just here, there we go. This is the fold of your fabric here. So when you come to stitch all the way around, you're stitching that turning gap closed. You don't need to do anything else other than top stitch the whole lot. So let's just trim our corners of our, this is our lining pocket, by the way, just so you know where I'm at. I must admit, I think you're going to find this bag quite useful. I can't decide what I'm going to use it for. I'm quite a selfish designer. I design things that I want, but I know that you'll probably like as well. And I'm figuring that I'll take it away with me for my computer, for the motorhome, maybe. I think it would actually make a great knitting bag. It's quite, I mean, it's big, so you know there's plenty of scope for all your needles. So I'm just pressing the pocket here. You can just see. And when it comes to, oh, I just need to poke that out a bit better. When it comes to the turning gap, just pull those seams and you can see it'll come together nicely. As it's lying flat, give it a press. And we'll stitch that onto the lining when we get to it. I'll leave that iron on. So tempted always to turn it off. Right. So we've done our pocket for the front. We need to now complete the straps. So I've got to change my thread again, and I did say there'd be a little bit of thread changing. I'm not going to change the bobbin, just the top thread. I don't think there's any need, and the same with when I did the quilting on the front with my beautiful gold thread. I still had cream thread in my bobbin. If you're going to be doing like proper machine embroidery, you would obviously choose a thread that matches, or you would even use like the gold embroidery thread. Depends how your machine is, because some machines are so fussy. But there's also things you can do to help you with all those sort of things, as you probably know. Oh, lovely needle thread. Lots of gadgets and gizmos, but it helps me do a quicker demonstration for you. There we go. Put the lid down. Okay, so we're going to do the straps. Obviously you've seen I've already done one set. Now with the straps, let's go on the overhead so you can see. You've got a piece that's, let's get the end where I haven't joined my pieces together, but it's good to show you that. All I've done is join 2 bits because I didn't have enough on the width. So this has been stabilised with an iron-on stabiliser, but a medium weight, so it gives it a little bit of rigidity. I've folded over both ends by about 1/4 of an inch, and I've ironed a crease all the way along like that. Then I've opened it up and I've brought together the outside long edges, and then I've folded it again, and that gives me my 1-inch strap, and we're going to top stitch all the way around. Be mindful of these ends, because these ends, there's quite a lot of fabric going on, so be careful. Make sure your machine can take it. And when you come to stitch these ends, use a stiletto to help push those little raw edges that will always want to stick out inside, so that they're nice and neat. So we're going to stitch all the way around. So again, I'm going to up my stitch length to I'll go 3.6. I can't remember what I used on my other ones, but I don't think anybody's going to measure it for me. So like I said, just tuck those ends in, and a little pokey tool, you know, a stiletto will do that for you. It's fine now. So take everything out, the bobbin, your thread up here, your thread, and rethread. So So we've ironed all of this, so it should be a lovely straightforward job. So you're stitching, I would say, yeah, I wouldn't say it was 1/8 of an inch, I'd say it's more a 1/16 of an inch. And I'll just put my dual feed on. And you're going to try and make sure that those folded edges are sitting right on top of each other. And because we're using a larger stitch, it goes really fast. So we're going down both sides, even though one side is a fold. And we're just coming up to the other end now. So I'm just going to fold my ends in, but when like I said before, when I come to go across that short end, I'm going to make sure that I'm going to use my stiletto and poke those little raw edges in. I just feel I've got my concentration face on today. So I'm using my stiletto, I'm literally poking them in just a fraction, not a lot, doesn't need a lot. So all the way back down. Obviously you can take your time. I'm using a matching thread on these straps, but the first one I made, I used a beautiful turquoise contrasting embroidery thread, absolutely glorious. Let's move that. It's like a snake, it's going all over the desk. Lovely. So I'm coming back to where I started, so I'm just going to snip my threads, just make sure it's nice and neat. And I'm just going to go over those first couple of threads, stitches. And that's all I'm going to do and break my thread. You don't want to be doing lots of back stitching. There we go. Just get that neatened off. There we go. Lovely. Super. So now we're going to put the straps and the pocket on at the same time. So if we move the machine and get you in on the overhead, I'll show you how we're going to do that. So there's my bag front or back. We need to find the centre here so we can line up our pocket. So I'm just going to fold this in half like that, and do make sure that all of your edges are meeting. And I do tell you in the pattern, by the way, what you need to do to cut these corners out. Now I'm going to use my iron just to give myself a little mark. With the wadding it's not so easy, but you might want to draw a line along here. Find the centre, and I've eyeballed it, I know where that centre is. Okay, and I could get a pen and just mark it up here. There we go. Pen won't work because the fabric is hot, but I know that's where my centre is because I've folded it, I can just see it. You might want to make that a crisper mark. And then I've got my pocket to go on the top, and almost disappears. So this edge here wants to line up absolutely perfectly on your seam line here, right? So if I move it, I don't know how you're going to see it because it's almost camouflaged. So if I bring it up, it sits right on the top. But again, we need to find the middle of this. So fold it in half. Get your iron. Again, you can measure it if you want to. And that sits right over the top. Now, I just happen to know what the measurement is. Oh, where's my lovely ruler gone? Down here. So let's get the right end. So about 5.5, 5.5. So if you measure that, you know you're going to be in the middle. But if you do it that way with the iron, with the folding, it's just as easy. So the first thing I want you to do is just to make sure that your seam line here at the bottom is sitting right on top of here. And we're going to use a pin just to hold that in place. You've got quite a lot of layers going on now, so be aware. And then bring it up flat. Make sure this is nice and flat, so you don't want any puckering in your pockets. Can you see the pocket there? So now we're going to pop our strap over the top. Now again, this edge here, let me move that up so you can see better. That edge there goes over the top of this. Now first of all, you want to make sure there's no threads sticking out and being a nuisance. So you want to make sure it's nice and crisp on that end, because obviously that's all raw edges. So you want to take the end of your bag strap, and it goes over the top halfway. So if I put my hand under there, that goes halfway. Okay, just halfway. It doesn't go right up to here. Let me see. Let me use my pocket so you can see that, because I want you to be absolutely clear. So this is where the seams are matching, and this goes halfway. Okay, so if I was to lift that up, you can see it's halfway. Okay, we don't want to pin that pocket down with it. And again, just make sure it's all lined up really nicely. You've got a lot of layers going on, so just pin that as best you can flat, so you know that it is lying flat. And then I'm just coming up to the top here and pinning that. I can get in there. There we go. Nope, still not caught. I don't want to lift it up. I think I've got it now. There we are. And you can put another pin there just to hold. Make sure your strap is not twisted. And again, you're placing it halfway over that raw edge. So that raw edge is sitting halfway underneath that strap there. And again, just pin that in place. This time I can get my hand underneath. There we go. And then get it nice and straight up to the top. And again, still hasn't gone through. Let me lift it up. There we go. You want some nice strong pins for this. I'm using Taylor Seville. But these are not the fine ones. The fine ones couldn't cope with this, so don't use them. You'll bend them, and you know I recommend those at the moment. These are the stronger ones, which is perfect for all these layers. So there's our bag strap in place. So stitching wise, we're going to stitch from here. We're going to come down here. I'm going to go on this bag. I'm going to go exactly on the top of my stitching that I've already done. I'm coming along here, right across the bottom, up, across the top, and don't go any further than the pocket, there's no need, up to the top, down the other side, and then across. Make sure that it's on that stitching again, and then up and perhaps across if you didn't do that when you started. Now on my other one, let me show you while you're still there. On the other one, have a look at this, because I've done a double line. Can you see coming down here? I've done a double line. Because I've used a contrasting thread, it would have looked clumsy if I had stitched on top of the existing line. So I've deliberately done a kind of train track all the way around, and it looks really beautiful up here. It really does. Really nice and professional. So that's what I've done for this bag. For this other bag, I'm just going to use my gold coloured regular cotton thread, and I'm just going to go over my existing stitching. It should be absolutely fine. Well, I know it is. I've already done it before. So let's bring the machine in. Let's put the pocket out the way. Let's bring that in. There we go. And so I'm just getting it lined up for you so you can see. And again, don't forget, we're going through quite a few layers here, guys, so be aware of your machine. If you find that it is too much, then maybe think about when you're interfacing whether you do want to use a medium weight. Maybe a lightweight is better. If you're using faux leather straps, I would just cut, I would go for a 2-inch wide strap and just bring the raw edges together and just get them to butt up, and then do a tram line down the centre. I wouldn't try to fold faux leather like this, certainly not. So I'm just going down that seam line, that stitch line that I did before. I'm taking the pins out as I go. So I'm across the bottom, and I'm going across the bottom of the bag, which I know is white, and I'm using gold, well, you know, gold coloured, but I don't do too bad a straight stitch. Just removing my pins, I'm holding everything in place. Just being careful when I come up to the straps, making sure my machine can take it. You could use your seam jumper, that if you've got one, that always helps going over layers. But I found with this machine I don't need to do that at the moment. So we're coming up the outside, just just caught my finger there, just a stitch beyond the pocket. Just make sure I'm not bleeding on my fabric. No, I'm fine. God, that really caught. Those pins are sharp. Ooh. I'll take that pin out now. Just make sure your pocket sits straight, because that was the only place it was attached temporarily. So coming down the other side. So now when I get to the bottom of my pocket, I'm just going to go over that stitching again. It's just making sure I'm not bleeding. It felt really sharp, but actually it's okay. Hi, I'm sorry to interrupt your sewing, but I just needed to tell you about my Gold Club. If you go to my website, lizzycurtis.com, you will see a page that says Sign Up Gold, and that's where you can first of all try the 14-day free trial period, or you can just sign up straight away and cut to the quick. You get 2 full concise patterns every month with 2 full videos. You also get a mid-month madness pattern that our Catherine makes for us, plus a video to accompany that as well. You also get all the Making It Monday projects for that current month as well for your membership. We have TV celebrity guests every month talking to us about their sewing journeys, or just what they get up to in their crafting lives. And it's people that you know that are on your TV screens. We also do personal challenges every month as well. For 2022, we're doing a 12-month journal page, all stitching. And then we're raising money for children in need also, with a bear project every month. Not a Pudsey bear, a different sort of bear. So if you join the Gold Club, you really won't regret it. You do need to join the Facebook page to get full advantage of being a gold member. Listen, I have just finished a Facebook Live with my lovely ladies in the group on Facebook, and we have just made this fabulous scrappy patchy scarf. And those are the sort of things that we do just on an ad hoc basis. It's a great place to be. Come on, sign up and join us. I'm just thinking of the times when I've inadvertently cut myself when I've been on live TV, and you have to get the attention of the floor manager that's looking after you for the show, and you're going they have to find you then a big old plaster to stick on it. I remember my daughter did that once, and they didn't notice that she was bleeding everywhere. I mean, you don't deliberately, you know, want to cut yourself on live TV, but it happens sometimes. Right, so that's stitched the pocket on. Very happy with that. I'm just little thread there. So I mean, the other thing is, I was considering this the other day, is that if you weren't going to quilt this entire body piece, you could insert the strap and the pocket into that seam there, but you can't really do that if you're quilting the whole piece. So that's why the pocket and the straps are placed on top. But as I said, if you don't want to do the quilting, then you can pop those straps and the pocket inside that seam, and it would make a very nice, neat job. So there is our other body part done. So now we need to move on to the lining, and all we're doing with the lining is stitching the pocket on, and then we're putting the zip in, and it's almost done. So let me just make sure I've got my fabric going the right way. So once again, we're going to fold it in half. We're going to find the crease, or get the crease, and we're going to do the same. In fact, we could probably finger press this. So just get that crease just on that top few inches so you can line up the pocket, and then I'm going to fold my pocket in half. Make sure that the folded part is at the top. Just fold that in half. I'm going to give that a little iron. Okay, so now if you have a look on the overhead, can you see I've got that crease there? I mean, that really, it was better, always better with it going in. And I've lined it up with the finger crease that I've done here. I just need to measure down. So let me get my trusty ruler. So I'm measuring down, and all of these measurements are in the pattern. You mustn't worry about having to guess or try to follow me on the video. It's all on the pattern. So just pin that in place. There we go. And then all we're going to do now is we're going to stitch from there across to there. This is our turning gap here, look. Stitch that down and then up to the top, and that's our lovely inside pocket done. So we'll just change the thread. We've got another thread change to make just in a little while, because we're going to put the zip in, but it's the top stitching on the zip. Just bear with me 1 second. It's the top stitching on the zip, not putting the zip in, that will need a thread change. But if you know, you will have to decide when you make yours, if you do make one, is to whether you want to change the threads this amount of time. I mean, it's no bother, and it makes a nice, neat, professional job. I mean, wouldn't want to stitch the pocket in using a gold thread. Well, good. So we're just going to top stitch that pocket. Let's just put a, oh, I'm not going to touch that again. That's it. Oh, I did. There we go. So down to the bottom, about 1/8 of an inch maybe. I wouldn't go any bigger than that or smaller than that. So around about 1/8 of an inch is fine. So just make sure that's sitting nice and straight. That's it. Super. Right, so there's our pocket in place. Okay, could do with press. So now we're going to put the other side of the zip in, because I've already done one side just to save a bit of time. Now it's up to you whether, and I'll have to do a thread change when I do the top stitching. Now it's up to you whether you stitch, you know, you make a zip sandwich and you put the outer and the lining on at the same time, or whether you do the outer first and then attach the lining. That's what I'm going to do. So if we look on the overhead, got the right side of the fabric facing me, and there's the right side of the zip. Now the zip, I've asked you to cut an 18-inch zip, and that should be long enough. I'm just trying to get it on so you can see it all. It should be long enough to overhang the end so you can get that zip slider out of the way. It's just easier for you if that zip slider is out of the way. So yeah, an 18-inch is absolutely fine. So let's just make sure we've got it the right side facing down. So obviously you can use quilting tape, you can use clips. Let's use some clips on this. You want to put your zipper foot on your machine. I would always use the tools that are provided with the machine. Just make sure that these ends are sitting absolutely parallel to each other, so they're all sitting on top of each other nicely, and clip it in place, and then just work your way down the zip and just attach your clips. Or you can obviously use your pins, like I say, use quilter's tape. Anything that's going to make it easier for you has got to be a bonus, hasn't it? So let's change our foot. So we'll just get this little gadget out of the way. Let's see, that's it. Still learning how to use this machine. It's good. I'm really enjoying it. I'm really enjoying it. It's lovely to use a machine that's so intuitive, although it tells me off all the time. So all I'm doing is stitching the top layer on first, okay, the outer piece. That's all I'm doing first. Sometimes I find it, I don't know, just easier to do, maybe. And then when I go to stitch the lining on, I just follow the stitches that I've already created. Now your zipper foot is designed to be your friend. You may not think so sometimes, but it is. And it's designed not to hop over the teeth. As long as your teeth are, I think, facing up towards you, so right side facing up, then it's absolutely fine. It can't really jump over. It's not. You're not going to break anything. I always say, just have a go. Don't be worried too much about it. Let's just move this a little bit. Try to make sure your ends are still lined up, you know, the two ends that are going to meet at the zip. If they are a little bit out, it doesn't matter too much. You've got a 1/2 inch seam allowance when we put this together, so you've got lots of wriggle room. So there's the other half done. We've now got to do the lining. So if you always remember right sides together, you'll never go wrong. So right sides together with the pockets on top of each other and the right way up. Do check all of that when you look into the bag, the pocket has the fold on the top, and then you're not looking at the stitched part, because all of these sides are identical. So be aware. I know I'm going to have somebody say, "Glad you told me that," because so obviously you're going to pin this or clip this, or you do whatever's comfortable for you. So I've actually turned it over so the zip teeth again are right sides to me, and I'm just going to follow the original stitching that I did. Now if this is where you've you cut back on your wadding, you'll find it a lot easier to stitch. Just keep everything laying nicely on top of each other. Just want to pull that. That's it. Got it now. Keep checking. Keep lining up. Keep making sure all your layers are sitting nicely on top of each other. But pinning, using your quilting clips, using your quilting tape will really help. Okay. About there, a bit wriggly there, but Okay, so I've attached my two outer pieces together. Let's just bring this round this way, then I'll show you. I'm going to top stitch in a minute, so I've got to change the thread. So I've put my two sides together, my outer pieces together, and my lining pieces are together. Make sure your pockets are sitting here, look. Okay, facing the zip. So I've already top stitched one half, so now I'm going to top stitch the other half. I'm going to use my regular foot as well. So I'll take that off and put my regular foot back on. That's it. And put my gold thread back on. And I have to say, it's not a bad thing to keep practicing rethreading your machine, changing the threads. It's easy to get sort of a little anxious about these things, and that's only because you perhaps haven't done it very often. It's like the first time I had to thread a bobbin on the machine. It's like, do I really have to do that? Yeah, of course. But it's never so bad as what you think, and then once you've done it a few times, it's like, okay, not so bad. Right, so we've got our regular foot back on. So I'm going to move my needle across, so I'm hoping that you have that facility. So let's just change that to, I think I had it on about 5, 6. That doesn't make any sense to you, but I've moved my needle so it's further toward the zip teeth, which means that my regular foot will sit on top of the teeth and the needle will just sit on the seam, and it will give me a lovely, lovely neat finish. So let's just get this under here. That's it. The main thing we've got, I've got that the wrong way around. The main thing you want to make sure is that all your pieces are lying flat. So I would always say at this point to have pressed your, let's just get that over a little bit more. That's it. Just want to get that lined up nicely for top stitching. I think we're okay, yeah. So so what I'm saying is this: get your outer piece, get your lining piece. Now you could, and you've seen me do this before, pin these layers together, right, so the raw edges are sitting right together, because that means that as you're stitching along, and do pin this, as you're stitching along, all of those layers are going to be sitting nicely underneath as well as on top. It's no good you doing a beautiful top stitch on the top to find out that you've caught all your lining where the zip is. So make sure that all those layers are sitting nicely on top of each other. But really a good press will ensure that works perfectly. So I'm just grabbing hold of my raw edges and I'm pulling it. And just keep doing that. But like I say, a good press will really help you. So all the way along. Lovely. There's a lot of fabric going on here now. Okay, so I might as well keep the gold thread in. No point changing it again. Let me just trim off some of these threads here. So now comes the part where we're going to actually make the bag up. So you're going to bring together your two outer pieces like that, and your lining pieces will automatically fall down. And what we're going to do is first of all make sure your straps are well out of the way. They're nowhere near your seams. tuck them in the pockets if you want. And we're going to stitch all of these sides. So you've got 4. You've got this one, you've got this one here, you've got the lining, which is from here to here, and the one down there. You're also going to stitch along the bottom, all the way along your outer, so all of that here gets stitched. When it comes to the lining, as usual, along the bottom we will stitch, I don't know, let's say 4 inches either side of our corners. So if I open that up, there's the corners there. It's not easy because they're a bit floppy. We're going to stitch just like that, and we're going to leave this piece open, and it's about 6 inches, and I wouldn't stint on that because it's quite a big bag to turn through. So before we do anything, we're going to open that zip. At the moment I still haven't trimmed my zip. I shouldn't worry about that, not at the moment. We can do that in a little while. So I'm opening my zip up and get hold of it, about 3/4 of the way. So I'm just going to do all of those edges. So really we've got 6 edges, half an inch seam allowance. Make sure that if you're using a contrasting piece, in fact I meant to say that my lining doesn't have a contrasting piece, you'll notice. My other bag does, and I'll show you that in a minute. I just decided to do 1 block piece, but the pattern suggests that you have a contrasting piece, just for difference. So let me move my needle back to where it should be, in the middle. And like I said, you're doing, and I want to do a back stitch. That's it. Yeah, so you've got half an inch seam allowance on this. So if you cut your wadding well, then this should be super easy. You'll be mindful of things being knocked off your desk. Let's just bring my machine in a bit. And again, you might want to pin all this. Okay, so we're just going to work our way around. So I've done one of my outer. Now I'm going to do my lining. So just line them up. A nice ½ inch seam allowance is really quite pleasant to stitch sometimes. I wouldn't measure it. Do a centimetre. If you've got a marking on your machine. So now I'm going to do that bottom. I'm working round, so I'm going to do the bottom of my lining. So I'm going to stitch, well, probably about 4 inches. I'm not going to measure it. Shimmy it along. Okay. So I've left that turning gap between there and there. So now I'm coming up the other side of the lining. So obviously both lining pieces are right sides together. All the way up. If you've got to this bit and you haven't opened your zip, you've still got time. Okay, so that's my lining stitch. So now I'm going to put the side of the body together, the outer. Okay, just want to try and get my contrasting pieces sitting on top of each other. We'll give it our best shot. Okay. I don't know if it is or it isn't. I don't know if it wriggled. Be nice if it didn't. But you pin it. You pin it and make sure. So now I'm going to stitch across the bottom of the two outer pieces. We're not far off finishing now. You'll be pleased to know. But like I said to you before, the drawing of the lines of the quilting will take a while. It could take you a good half an hour maybe. You could use a quilting guide that attaches to your machine. No reason why you can't. I do quite like an old-fashioned drawn line though. And then the quilting itself takes a while. So there we are. So we've stitched around every single piece, every single edge. Not these parts, not where the zip is, and not these corners. We're doing that next. And then we've stitched across the bottom of the lining but left that turning gap. So now what we're going to do is we are going to box our corners. Now if you've done bag making before, you know boxing corners is dead easy. You're just putting your two fingers in your square, the points of your square. You're just matching up your seams. Open those seams up if you want to, nest the seams if you want to, and you're just going to stitch straight across. We're going to do all four, then I'm going to do the middle. And you'll think, how does that work? It just does, it's like magic. So, and we're doing 1/2 inch seam allowance again. So I'll just make sure these weren't brilliantly nested, but I think I'll get away with it. So you might find if you've used Bozal, no, that doesn't want to play. No. Okay, I'll just cut that then. If you've used Bozal, you might find that it's very unyielding to put under your machine. Wadding is a lot more softer and more malleable. So again, just squidge your corners, pop it under the machine. So we've done the two outer corners. So now we're going to do our lining corners. So where you've got the V, we're just opening that up, if we can. That's it. We're just pinching the points and we're just going to stitch across the bottom there. Now if you wanted to, obviously I've given you a certain measurement to use for these corners, but you could, if you wanted to, make your boxy bottom bigger. You know, you could add another 1/2 inch on if you want to. When you cut those corners off, it's not hugely wide, but you could make it wider. There's no reason why not. But you'd have to do that on all four corners of all the pieces. So again, just split that open. Nest the seams if you want to. I think with the lining it's not so sort of crucial. Make sure it's nice and strong. Good. So that's all four outer corners boxed. When it comes to the centre, what you've got, I'm going to trim my zip in a sec. What you've got is a rectangle. So what you've got to do is, first of all, I would join this zip together. So where you've got one end that'll have a slider, and it's intact. So it's, I don't know if you can see it, that is intact, because that's where the end where the slider would go to. On this end, it's already, the legs are split open. If you're using a zip that's exactly the right measurement, that won't happen, but I would say it's better to have the zip slider out of the way. So I would really want to join my zip together so it doesn't cause me any problems. You've got to remember you've got a 1/2 inch seam allowance, so you don't want the legs to split before the 1/2 inch seam allowance. So get as close as you can to the bag raw edges. Take your time with it. I'm laughing because I have no idea what this machine does. No idea. But I've joined my zip ends together with just a straight stitch. You could put it in so it goes in that way and do a zigzag and reduce your stitch length, so you do a nice neat zigzag, but that's not a bad way of just joining them together so you don't have to worry about it. In the pattern, I've actually hand stitched that together with embroidery thread, so it's really strong. So now what you're going to do is layer this all up. So just as we did before, you've got to imagine that the zip is the point and the other point is your bag. So you're going to bring those together. Make sure the zip is right in the centre. And then on the other side, I wonder if it would be better to show you on the overhead. Let's do it on the end that doesn't have the stitching there so it doesn't confuse you. So let's have a look at this on the overhead, see if it makes more sense. So you've got this sort of bit here where you've got two little, well, openings, let's call them that. So this zip here, if you could imagine that this zip is your other point. You remember when we do corners, you've got that point. So this centre of the zip needs to go to the centre seam. So if I bring them together, and obviously you can put a clip on that to hold it. So there's your first fold, like that. Whoops, something's fallen off. And then just open up the other section here, and then you're folding that again. So these are your outside points here, and they should all sit on top of each other. So just open that up and they will sit like that. Let's just do that a bit better. There we go. So that'll sit right on top like that. I hope that's clear. Let me do it again just to make sure. So you've got these two sort of hold sections here. Let's just do it so you can see. There we go. There's two hold sections. So if you get the seam of your lining, let's say, and take it to the center of your zip, then these 2 points will automatically make a boxy bottom, just as you would before. So there's your boxy bottom like that. But you're going to do the same for the other side. So you're going to bring that side seam in, and it's going to sit right on top of the zip teeth. You know, it's going to sit right in that center there. Okay. Let's just pop a clip in there just to hold all those layers together. And all of that is going to be stitched with a 1/2 inch seam allowance going across here. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. You're just bringing the seams to the zip and then the seam to the zip, and you're making that boxy bottom even though you've got 2 layers going on there. So you're stitching right across. So you're catching all of those layers. Again, 1/2 inch seam allowance. If you've got a needle down facility, that is so useful, especially for something like this. I'll just take my clips out. Just be careful when you're going over the zip teeth. And when you've finished this little bit, I just want you to check and make sure that you caught all the layers. Yep, I'm happy with that. There's that little bit there. Just a wee bit that I need to go over again. And it's just security really, because that's going to be where you're going to unzip, zip, do things up. It's going to take some weight, so it wants to be nice and secure. So let's pop that under there again. Just make sure we've caught that. And if it doesn't sit right, then undo it and have another look at it. But take your time with it. I think we'll be okay with that. So on the other end, again, we're going to do exactly the same. So I'm bringing the side seam of my outer bag up to the zip teeth, folding it so my points are going out, and then the side seam of my lining will sit on top of the teeth, and all of those layers are going to sit on top of each other. So let's just pop that under there. Like I say, if you've got a needle down facility, it's like having a third hand. It's lovely. Just make sure your zip teeth stay together. There we go. So we're stitching the lining and the outer body at the same time. And that ends up making it really neat. And of course now we can trim our zip. I only leave it to the last minute because it's kind of like a security blanket, isn't it? So we left our zip open, if you remember. So now we're just going to pull it through. And like I said, it's quite a chunky bag, so it'll take a moment to get everything through. I've never found an easy way of doing this. I'm sure lots of you will tell me that there is another way. I just keep going until it's all through. There we go. It's coming. I don't like to really, force it, because I'm thinking, hold on a minute, I've just spent hours stitching this. I want it to, I want to take it easy with it. There we go, it's lovely, it's coming now. There we go. So obviously we've got the lining showing, so we need to turn that through again. So turn it back on itself again. I can open this zip up a bit more, that might help. And we need to stitch the turning gap, guys. I don't think I did with my original sample. I'm wicked at that. So poke out your boxy corners. Fabric looks nice, doesn't it? The gold with the little animals. And obviously at the top here, that'll all be boxed as well. So just poke those, and you can see, let me just show you how nice that looks. So it needs a good press. Needs a good press. But there we are. Isn't it great? And you've got the pockets here as well, and obviously you've got the zip there to really hold it in place, and actually a nice press. And then that'll look absolutely gorgeous. And with the gold stitching on it, the gold quilting really lifts it. You may not be able to see it on camera, but it really lifts it. Absolutely gorgeous. And I love this fabric. So there's the second one made, which needs now a good press. Here's the first one made. And let's have a look. Yeah, see in the bottom, if you can see, I had a pink hold on, let's see if I can get it on the camera right, a pink contrast. You don't have to do that, but it's just quite a nice little touch to do. So there we are. So there is Dorothy. So you've got two versions. You've got the animal one, and you've got the very smart sort of, almost looks like tweed, doesn't it? But it's not, it's quilting cotton. It's quite deceiving. And I think you're going to really enjoy making them. So that's Dorothy. I hope you make loads.